Today we're going to be talking about an interesting type of chord that is really, it really helps you unlock the more frets on the fretboard, right? So lately we've been talking about just chords that we're playing on the open position, right? And why do we call it open position? Well, because when you play the chords, you're utilizing some open notes. For example, I'm playing that D string. When I play that D major chord, right? I play that E open E string when I play that E major, right? So let's take a look at some open chords, right? Nope, not those ones, wrong one for right now. For example, a C major, right? We're utilizing some fingers on the first three frets, but then we're getting help from these open strings, right? So, and these are the really, really good and classical chords of a guitar, done in the open position. So they're probably they may be the easiest, but they're the most essential, right? C major, G7, right? Pretty good. We also have other 7 chords down here, right? But I want to talk about why haven't we seen a C minor, right? Right, so C minor does exist. However, it's not gonna look exactly like that. Remember the pattern. What do you do to make a major chord a minor? It's the movement of one fret. So one note goes backwards, right? So I guess technically you could say that this would be a C minor. But you're never gonna see someone play a C minor like that, right? You're gonna see people play a C minor actually more like this. So introducing a new type of chord, right? So if these chords were the open position chords, this new chord that we're going to do is going to be, I guess in a sense, it's like closed position of doing a chord, but we don't call it closed because that just sounds kind of weird and goofy. But we're gonna call this kind of chord a bar chord, right? And bar chord spelled like this. I didn't know that it was spelled like this. With E, without E? I can't remember.
Bear.
But yeah, right? You would think you would be spelling out bear, but it's actually pronounced exactly like how you would pronounce this word, bar, right? Why they don't just call it a bar? It's beyond me, right? So, right? Now, does that look easier to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, arguably you could say that I remember when I first started doing guitar, I remember the C major chord being kind of a hard one. And I remember the bar chords also being kind of hard, but I was able to do it really easy. Now, the reason why they call it a bar chord, right, is that this one finger. So how can your one finger do so many strings at the same time? How would you think you would do one finger, right?
Keep one finger flat on all of them.
Perfect. I love that answer. So you would keep one finger flat on all of them, just like this. Now, I noticed that it does take a little bit more pressure than a normal regular chord would to do it. So I do recommend actually before you even attempt a bar chord to just make sure that you're able to give the sound of each string like that, just using that one finger. And unfortunately, the lower the fret you are, it makes it a little bit harder. But if you have enough strength to do it on the first fret, the other frets should technically be a little easier, you know? So I'm not really putting that much pressure. And as I go down, unfortunately, it gets a little bit more harder. I have to use a little bit more technique. Now, so like I said before, C major has a very familiar shape that I've shown you guys before in the past. But to do it in a bar chord forms, it's kind of weird, right? That first finger right here, this note is a C note. And just like the C major, the C minor also has that note. Do you guys remember what the dad note was? What do we call that? We call that starts with an R. What do plants have?
Roots.
Root. So that would be the root note, right? So that checks off the box, right? We still don't play that E. So our root note is actually on the A string. I kind of wish I had the other chord as an example, but this will work just as fine, right? Now, let me just steal it from here. So I did mention that it was a minor. right? I did mention that this was a C minor. So, I kind of want you to see, what would you think make it a minor, right? So, here is the same thing. So actually, when you play an A minor, you've actually been playing a bar chord, a secret hidden bar chord. Because A minor, kind of also like the E major or E minor, they also kind of, they're also both hidden bar chords, right? So if you play an E major like this, it's kind of almost like if you were switching the fingers and having an invisible finger here on the nut. But because it's an open chord, meaning that you're playing the different strings, using the different strings, these 3 strings are open, you don't need to bar anything. Now, if you move it 1 fret higher, that's when it starts getting tricky, and where you have to actually use that first finger. But the shape remains the same. Just notice how the shape still remains the same. So if I have an E major here, and I move it 1 more fret higher, I have to use my finger now to make it a bar. But is it still a major? Is it still a major?
Yeah.
It's still a major because I have my finger right there, just like an E major, right? Now, if I take my finger off of it, it would be a minor. It would be a minor. Just like an E would be also a minor as well, like that. Right. And it's a movable shape. Why? Because the same shape makes it true for all the frets. Right? Let me see here. Here's a better example. Sorry. I don't know why I started with the C minor, but for example, right? And I also don't have an E minor, but you guys know what an E minor should look like. By now, at least you should. Notice that on a G minor, right? And also, yeah, we weren't able to play G minor in the open chord position. Well, I guess technically you can, because if you're doing a G major, what would also really be right, what would be considered right, is to move this finger backwards 1, and then this would be a minor. But you will never see anyone play this horrible version of a G minor. They're gonna use this version of a G minor, which is a what, guys? It's a bar chord, exactly, right? So as same concept, right? This time the root is going to be on the 3rd fret. It's kind of like when you do a G major, how your root is on that 3rd fret, right? You go E, F, F sharp, G, right? But this time you're doing the bar chord. And it's a minor because these 2 fingers right here, just like the E minor, gets moved all the way up here. And you bar across the whole fret. So 1 finger actually plays all the strings, just like that. Makes it a minor, right? So, and the root, remember guys, being on the E string. So 2 different types of bar chords. And I guess you can also do a root on the D string. You can do a root on all the strings, but you just start running out of, they start becoming a little bit different. So for now, we're just gonna stick on bar chords, but with the root being on either the low E string or the low A string, or I guess just the A string, right? So E major, A minor. So another thing important to note, that to make a C minor major, you would actually move this finger forward, kind of like how an A major chord looks like, right? And so I have a lot of times the major bar chords on the A string is a little bit more of a challenge for me, but there you go, like that. But I like to cheat all the time. I just like to play it like, you know, and then I just mute those 2 strings. But you guys don't do that because you guys are students. You will learn the right way. So,